Alright, here we are on the Bessemer Magneto rewind. Got my primary winding done. Brand new wire there. What is that, 21 gauge, I think? That's what I put on there. 4 layers. That's it for the primary. And I'm ready to start the secondary winding now, which was the actual problem. And that is 40 gauge wire, which you can see right there, if you can. Can you see it? 40 gauge wire. Got a spool of it here on my little mount here. And we're going to wind this one by hand instead of how we did it with the Briggs & Stratton Magneto with the valve grinder motor. But this one's going to be done by hand because this wire is so delicate. See it there. But I've made my solder joint there, the connection between the primary and the secondary. So I just gotta hold that down. I'm gonna put another layer of insulating paper over the primary, which all I'm using is just the paper that you get if you get a machined part or any kind of internal part. This corrosion inhibiting paper. So that's what I'm using for insulating tape or paper. So we'll be back in a little bit. Alright, well, I kind of made a mistake here. It's a few days later and I've been winding this coil, you know, a little bit at each day when I have the time. And I just got done with the secondary winding, and I put some insulation on it, and I just realized that I forgot to make a video of me actually winding it. I think you guys saw the primary winding when it was done. Here are the 2 leads for that. The secondary winding, it's still attached to the spool, you can see right here. Runs right up to my spool there. But this would be the high voltage output wire. It would end up to the spark plug. The other end of this secondary winding is bonded with this end of the primary winding. So, and that goes to ground. So yeah, it was kind of a mistake. I just put this stuff on now. I saw my camera sitting on the bench and I thought, oh, whoop, forgot to make a video. But there it is. It's a lot of turns of wire, a lot of layers. One thing I'll mention too is this wire is so small. I mean, I can hardly see it. My eyes aren't that bad, but you know, I can't, you know, I can't physically count the turns. So when I took this you know, coil apart, when I cut it apart, what I did was just measure the width of each layer. The final layer on the original coil was a 1/4 inch wide on this whole core. Then it staggered its way up to the full width, which is about 1.25 inches. Over about, you know, over 5 layers or so, it gradually got larger, and then the final 20 layers were full width. But yeah, so I didn't even bother counting the number of turns. I just figured the wire's the same diameter, and if I fill the same area, it's the same number of turns, give or take. Which in a core with, I estimate, 16,000 turns, if I'm off by, you know, 200 turns, I'll just make up for that. I'll put an extra few turns on the last winding and it'll be alright. So that's where I'm at with this right now. Like I said, I just put this stuff on now, so it's still tacky. I'm going to have to wait a little bit before I do the final insulation wrap on it. I'll take it off of the mount, and I still have to determine how to connect this collector ring to this fine piece of wire. Originally this ring had a single strand of wire, about this 21 gauge, like the same size as the primary, coming out of this hole right here. It's brass and connects to the collector ring, and that was just soldered to the end of this secondary winding. But I mean, that pulled right out of there. I mean, that could have been half the problem, the fact that it didn't have a good connection in there. But, so I'm going to have to solder another piece of wire on there before so I can connect it to the end of the secondary. I don't think I showed you... Oh, there they are. Here's some of the original winding. I don't think I showed you what I found in here. I mean, you can see how fine that wire is. Man, oh man. But if you remember the FH, not the FH, the Model F Briggs rewind, you'll remember as I was cutting that down, I showed you just like the green contamination, sorry about that, in the windings where moisture got in and the varnish insulation deteriorated, and the green was the copper corroding. Well, you can see it there. There's a big patch actually right there. Geez, sorry. Right in there. Just green flakes and stuff. And it's all throughout this secondary winding, really. You see it on my finger there. And it's all throughout. Ooh, there's a big patch right there. Down inside there. All throughout this secondary winding. And what that means is that, you know, the wire might be very nearly corroded through, which is definitely possible with a wire that measures 0.03 of an inch in diameter. So, and like I said, what that means is that you no longer have only one gap to jump anymore, the spark plug gap. Now you're jumping gaps inside the coil, and that's not good. Maybe not necessarily jumping gaps, but you're adding resistance where it's not beneficial. So that's why we're doing this. That's why I went through all the trouble to rewind this coil. So that's what we're doing. Hopefully it works. It should. Stay tuned. Alright, well, we finally reached the end of the Bessemer Magneto repair. Magneto rebuild. Rewind, whatever you want to call it. So, I've got the armature back in the mag itself. There's my new coil. Got two primary connections to the condenser, one there and one on the other side. Spins freely, the bearings are nice and tight. So the last thing I'm going to do with this mag is charge the magnet. It's not really weak. I mean, this is a piece of 1-inch plate here, and I can lift it up by the magnet. I've charged this, you know, a couple weeks ago when I was first trying to get spark out of this thing. I figured I'll throw it on the charger because it was weak then. Now it's pretty strong now, but I figure, well, it can't hurt to give it another couple seconds on the charger. You know, before we put it all back together for the last time, hopefully. So here's my charger. Made a video of this, geez, 2-something years ago, 2.5 years ago, back when it was just a plate and 2 posts. Well, a couple weeks ago, like I just mentioned, I was trying to get spark out of that mag, and I was getting a little frustrated, and I was kind of willing to try anything. So I had some wire laying around, you know, some half-full spools of wire. This is just 14 gauge stranded THHN, you know, regular wire, really, just for wiring up a machine or pulling through a conduit or whatever you would want to do with it. But so I figured, well, what the heck? Let me wind it on these cores since I had them, since I had the thing already built, and give it a shot. So I did that. There's 3.5 layers of windings on each of these cores. That's all the wire I had, and it works really well, actually. It could probably work better if I used the enamel wire, because you could get more windings on it. They'd be closer together, less gap between the conductor and the core, so you have a better transfer of the field. And, you know, of course, when I do this correctly, when I, you know, redo this thing properly, it'll have the enamel wire, and the cores will be twice that thickness when I'm done with it. So it'll be a really, really powerful magnet. But this works well as it is. I've actually recharged 2 Magnetos in the past 3 weeks since winding these, and they both came out great. They both throw a real hot spark after this. So we're going to go ahead and I'll show you what I do to charge these up. So just stand by. Alright, so I got my 2 little adapter plates on each end of the core there. They're just sitting on here. The thing you have to note with these is you want all the mating surfaces to be as square and as flat as possible. So you want as much surface area contact between the tips of the poles and the ends of your magnet. These sit pretty flat. They need to, I really have to take them over to Road King's house and face them down on the mill and then polish them so they sit nice, but for now they're alright. So, and you can see behind there I've got just a sealed lead acid battery, which I'm using as my power supply. Using that particular battery because its current output is limited to about 25 or 30 amps. So anything more, and I would risk burning these windings up, because I mean they get warm as it is. So I'll just I'll show you what the procedure is for charging one of these things up. First off, you gotta. It's not so much you have to find the poles of the magnets, but you have to get it lined up with the core, with the charger correctly. So one other thing is, let's see. If you ever take a magnet off of a Magneto or anything, always put a big, nice, heavy plate underneath of it to short the cores, or else your magnet will weaken if it's just left open like that. So always keep it on something. Let me retie my rope here real quick. Don't drop my magnet. Okay. So basically, get your magnet hanging from a piece of string or a piece of rope like I have here, and just energize the charger momentarily. It didn't really well, here, I'll get the magnet spin. You can see it'll find its home, right? Just like that. So basically what that did, you shouldn't let the magnet slap down like that either. I'm actually a little bit annoyed that happened. It's a pretty powerful charger, and hold the magnet on the rope with 2 hands while you get somebody else to energize the charger. But anyway, the magnet's now lined up. I'm not sure what the north and south pole are here. It really doesn't matter, just as long as the magnet's lined up correctly like that. If this would be south, that would be north. That'd be north, that'd be south. So, easy as that. So, basically, I just have a wire. I'm going to touch the contact, energize the charger for bursts of between 3 and 5 seconds. While you do that, take a piece of brass like this and just gently tap on the poles of the magnet. Now, I'm not really sure what that does, but that's what everybody seems to do, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to energize it. Let off. Energize it. Let off. Energize. Let off. And one more time. Okay. Just in that little bit of time, these coils got warm. Not really warm, but you can definitely feel they're above the temperature when we started. So we'll take that off of there. Yeah, pretty hard, and put it right back on our keeper plate. Always put it on the plate when you're done. Alright, so let's put this thing back together. Alright, one last thing I want to note here is just always make sure that your magnet goes onto the core the way that it came off. Don't flip it north to south, south north. This Bosch Magneto was marked with the T right here stamped, if you can see it. I'm not sure what that indicates, but I just scribed the same here just so I knew where it would come off, because the core is going to have a little bit of residual magnetism once you pull the actual magnet off, so just so those two forces don't work against each other, make sure it goes back the way it came off. But I kind of wish I would have shown you guys the spark this thing had before I did the rebuild on it, or the rewind. It was pretty pitiful. You would have to have, I was using this plug, you would have to have the electrodes nearly touching to get a good reliable spark. And right now I have the gap set at about, I guess maybe 35 or 40 thousandths. So that should be a good test. If it jumps this gap reliably, I'll be pleased. And I can still fiddle with the points a little bit and see if I can improve it, but let's just see. I'm just going to hold this and spin it by hand. This wire is just a ground here. It's not cheating. It's just a ground that would go to the engine. Come on. Cover it up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. Turn this down. I'm trying to light out. I can't turn it. Sorry about that. Yeah, don't do that. Pretty good. Pretty good. That's a pretty reliable spark there, even at low speeds. If I just tick it over by hand really slow, I still get a good spark. That's what's important. I definitely call that a rebuild. I'm pleased with that. Let's say without the spark plug. Just try to go to the block or the frame. About the same gap. Stay there. That looks pretty good to me. Maybe I can open it up a little bit more. Oh yeah. See that? Oops, sorry. That's definitely pretty good. Alright. Turn the lights back on. Let's mount it on the engine and see if I can get some spark cranking it over. Alright, this is it. Mounted on the engine. Got my new adapter plate here. Just a piece of 7/16 inch flat plate to use as a spacer so I can save that original Bessemer insignia plate. So I'm gonna turn it over at normal cranking speed, and I'm gonna see if we can get a spark, because that's what matters. I don't know, can you guys even see that? Spark is a hard thing to show on camera. Yeah, looks like you can. Well, you can also see the impulse working there. I'll show you that. Bessemer. Moving along. Also got my exhaust box done, but that'll be something I'll show you in the next video.